Hey guys, Hoffinator7. Today I'm just going to do a video about Lexan Shields. It's something I've been doing for a little bit, and I've got a couple of examples here. The reason I'm making this video is because I'm going to make one for my new TX30 clone. Lexan is an interesting material. I've got a piece here. They call it tough, virtually unbreakable, and it's kind of true. I did some testing with 500 FPS gas KJW M700 sniper rifle, and point blank, it doesn't break it. What it'll do is the Lexan will absorb the energy and deform, so you'll get kind of like a bulge. It's almost like bulletproof glass, but for airsoft. And the great thing is that it's totally clear. I mean, you can't even tell it's there. I've got a couple examples here of custom Lexan shields I've made. That's not it. So I guess I'll start over here. This is a EOTech clone. Pretty standard stuff. You get the idea. And these are famous for getting shot out, and they're kind of hard to get. You have to order them from overseas, so I wanted to make a shield for it. And so this right here is the Lexan shield. What I did is I cut a piece of Lexan and just kept sanding it and fine-tuning it until I could press it in and it would stay. I did the same thing with this Xxx replica. It's a piece of Lexan that I fit and then just press fit in. And you can see there's, it doesn't change the clarity of the optic lens at all. The thing with this and the EOTech, since I had to press fit the piece of Lexan, they're touching the glass, and so I have yet to take a direct hit to either of these, and so I have no idea if the Lexan is going to absorb the impact or if it's just going to transfer the impact through to the glass since it's touching the glass. So right now it seems to be fine. I mean, I've been lucky enough not to take any hits to the optics, but I'm not sure. I think if it was up close, point blank, it would probably shatter the glass, but at distances, I think it should absorb it enough to, not to break the glass. I got a couple other examples over here. These are some lights. This is kind of like a cheap ultra-fire generic brand light. These are pretty easy to make shields for. You just need to cut a circle. Let's see, I still got the O-ring there. You just need to cut a circle. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect and pretty, because ultimately you're going to have a little bit of a bezel to cover that. So you can do this for all sorts of glass. It's good for flashlights because it'll protect the LED. It's best for optics because then you basically ruin the optic if it breaks. This is a TLR1 replica. This has got one too, but you can't even tell. I'm not going to take it off because the threads are getting pretty iffy, and I think it's about to strip. But these are some of the, I would say this is the hardest kind of shield to make because you've got to fit it perfectly. These are the easiest because you can just kind of get it close to a circle, and as long as it fits in and doesn't leave any gaps, you're good to go. And then this is one of the easiest things you can do. This sight has flip-up protectors. What's great about these is that they come off. So inside, put a piece of Lexan. Super simple. Don't even need to screw it on. So again, that's probably one of the easiest things. And this is good because there's, you know, there's a good amount of depth in here. And the Lexan is sitting on the edge here. So what that means is if it gets hit by the Lexan, there's no way it's going to touch the glass at all, which is what you really want. So, onto the project. The Xxx Replica, and this would apply for aim points as well, has this securing ring. It's got two little notches. It's got two little notches here and here. And you can either, what I do is take a screwdriver, get it in there, and just break it loose. This one wasn't glued. I know sometimes they're glued or they're just really tight. And ideally you would want a tool for that, but you know, you can make do with a screwdriver. So this just unthreads. It's basically a retainer ring. It's got threads on it. If I can get this in focus. And then you've got a glass lens, and then you've got the actual optic lens in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a Lexan version of this. Sorry if it was out of focus. So we're going to take our piece of Lexan, Sharpie, and you're just going to trace it out. So now that we've got our lens shape all traced out, we're going to take a Dremel tool and we're going to cut it out. Alright, so I've gone outside because working with Lexan is pretty messy. Some of the basic stuff you'll need, obviously a sheet of Lexan. This stuff is actually not too expensive. This was an 8x11 sheet, basically a piece of paper size, and I think it was about $4. I mean, the stuff is pretty cheap. You get a ton of stuff out of this, so it's kind of worth the investment, especially if you have a pretty expensive optic. Dremels, if you don't have one, I think this one was about $60. They're usually on sale. You can find them for pretty cheap. And they usually do come with everything you need. You need a cutting wheel, and then I've also got a sanding wheel. And you'll probably need to get a couple sanding wheels over the course of an entire sheet of Lexan. But without further ado, I will start doing this. When you're working on this, what you want to have is both ultimately your sight, or what you're going to be putting it in, and I usually also bring if I can grab it, the original lens, just so that you have something to compare what you're cutting out to. But since it is messy, you want to kind of keep that stuff off to the side. I keep it in a plastic bag just so it doesn't get burrs and stuff into the delicate part of the optic. Alright, so without further ado, what you want to do first is cut out your piece, and then after that you want to start shaping it. Alright, now we've got our very rough cuts. So what you want to start doing now is just taking a bit off until you get closer and closer to that circle. Now I've got a very rough shape on this lens here, and since we traced around it, when you cut it to the line, it's still, it's not going to be all that close, so there is still a lot of material we got to take off here before it's ready to go and ready for testing. Alright, so we're going to switch it up to the sanding wheel now. This is pretty simple. You just gotta, I kind of do like peeling something. Just kind of go around, and you want to just keep checking this against your original, and just keep checking for circular, because you're never going to get it perfectly circular by hand, but if you've got this to at least compare, which sides you need to just round off a little better, it's really helpful. This is going to get really dusty, so to try and preserve my camera, I'm going to not film this. You can use your imagination. It's pretty boring anyway, but I'll come back and show you the final results. Alright, so I just did a quick sand around the edges to get it kind of circular, and we're going to line it up now. And I can see that's actually pretty close. So I'm pretty close. I'm going to switch to a little finer wheel and go a little slower and just try and get it perfect. And then I'm going to start test fitting it into the actual optic. But if you're just starting out, don't be afraid to go slow. I mean, I did this in probably 30 seconds, just really rough going at it. But when you're starting out, go slow, take your time, because it's kind of annoying to have to start over and cut out a new piece. So, alright, so I finished up my touch-up sand, and now they're almost identical. With the Lexan, since you're doing it by hand, you're obviously going to have, bumps and peaks and stuff. You're never going to get it perfectly round unless you, I don't know, had some kind of machine to do that. But what I'm going to do now is just test it. And this optic has a little ridge that should sit in. That sits in that real nice. And I think this just needs a little bit more refining. It's not, I mean, it fits in tight, but I hope I can get it out. My suggestion is to wear some kind of protection, eye protection and hand protection when you do this. It's nasty stuff. Just turns into this dust that goes everywhere. And the problem is, it's not like sawdust where you can just kind of wipe it off. The plastic is statically charged, and so it just sticks to everything. So I'm just giving it a little bit of sanding around the edges. This is with a finer grain wheel. You just want to kind of repeat this until it fits. I think that should be good. Yeah, that's perfect. So now, what I usually do is take off these plastic covers. They just peel right off. And now I'm going to do just one final sanding. Now that I can see the real edges. Just do a real careful touch up. And obviously it's not perfectly circular, and that's okay. And I think we're good. So it should fit right in there. No problems. And then you just take the retainer ring and screw that down on there. Just some lessons I've learned with working with Lexan. I'll start by saying it's messy. It just creates an enormous amount of dust. You just gotta do it outside, unless you really don't care about your inside space. That being said, the best way to clean up the dust I've found is with compressed air. Just shoot some air and blow it away. That seems to work the best. Just trying to fit this. When it comes to attaching your shields, if you can't do this where it's got, you know, something to secure it, or you don't have a lens cap that you could put over the Lexan, and you're forced to, you know, glue it in somehow, the best thing you can do is, that works good, is to use silicone. Let me see if I got it. My GoPro, which I use to film all my gameplay, has a custom Lexan shield. It's a piece that I cut out, and then what I did is I glued it on with some silicone, you know, like a caulking kind of sealant. And this light is kind of how I figured that out. This is just kind of a cheapy NC Star light. You can get them for like 15-20 bucks. And the way it's designed, you can't easily get this lens out. You've got to, you know, the LED is in the way, and they've press fitted it or something. You can't even unscrew it. So what I did is I made a custom, I cut out a piece of Lexan, and then I put it on top, right on top of the lens, the existing lens, and I thought, oh, I'll just put a bead of super glue around it. Well, no, super glue is really thin, and it'll run, and it'll, you know, it basically took up the entire lens and made it foggy and basically unusable. So that's how I discovered you got to use silicone or something heavy, like a thick kind of glue that's not going to run, because the super glue is just far too viscous, and it just, you know, filled up the whole thing and dried, opaque, and basically ruined it. So eventually I managed to get the Lexan shield off, because since it was super glued, it was impossible to get off. Got that off, and the lens underneath, the actual original lens, was actually some kind of polycarb. It was plastic. It did not break off easily. So eventually I got it out, but the moral of the story is, you know, not everything is made of glass. Some manufacturers will actually put polycarb lenses, which, you know, basically won't shatter when they're shot, which is nice, but for people like me who don't know that, you know, there's no way to know without breaking it. Another lesson is to go slow. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but on this lens I was sanding and was just going too quick. It's going to be really hard to show. Right there on the edge. Let me get something pointy. Right here. edge here. We got something black. Well, on the edge there's a bit of a scrape, and what happened was I was dremeling, sanding, and then I just wasn't paying attention, and then my sanding wheel came up and in and basically nicked it. So that's something else you want to be careful doing. You don't want to go too fast, or you might mess up the surface. Fortunately, in this case, I don't really care because it's just going to be, pressed in there. But at least I've got a functioning flashlight. Before it was so cloudy, nothing came out. I think that's about it. This is for my streamlight, which is a really nice light for the price. It's kind of like my EDC tactical light. Did I say what it was? It's a Streamlight Polytac. It's a really great light. It's like $45, but it rivals most Surefires. But yeah. So that's just kind of a bit of an overview of how to make a Lexan shield, and hopefully you learned a little bit and I gave you some good advice. If you're confident with a Dremel, you can, and you've got some practice, you can knock one of these suckers out in probably 10 minutes. It's really not that hard. I know some people will sell these. I would never do that because everything is custom fit to every optic. I mean, you might be able to get away with general sizes, inch and a half circles, but if you've got a Dremel, the Lexan is not that expensive, so doing it yourself could save you some money in the long run. And overall, I think it just looks so much cleaner than those, the shields that are basically, you've got your sight and then a shield right in front of it, and those are just ugly. I've seen those crack and break. They're not actual Lexan, they're some other kind of polycarb, which is not as impact resistant. So I think you're better off going with actual Lexan. It's really not that much. I think it's cheaper for square footage, but you got to work it and fit it to your application. But I think it's totally worth it. You just got to be careful. Like I said before, if you've got the Lexan right up against the glass, I'm not sure if that's really going to protect it all that well. But it's a little bit of peace of mind knowing that if you're like me, you like nice optics, that they're not going to get shot out. I don't have the money to keep replacing these things, so that's about it. If you've got any questions, feel free to send me a message or comment below. I don't think I would ever make custom Lexan shields to ship out. If you're a local guy and you know me and we play at the same places and you want one, I would probably make you one. Not that big a deal. But yeah, that's about it. Have a good day, guys.